Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marcus Coleman. I serve as the director for the Center for Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships at the Department of Homeland Security. And welcome to the third edition of our webinar series, Welcome to the Neighborhood. We are excited to have so many of you join us today. A few housekeeping notes. One, if you have questions, feel free to drop the questions in the chat or in the Q&A pod at any time. Excuse me, please drop all of your questions in the Q&A pod. Two, this webinar is being recorded as well as our other webinars. So this is, as I mentioned, the third installment. If this is your first webinar joining us, after this webinar, we will provide an email that provides links to the other prior recordings as well. And three, we want to just thank everybody for attending today. We have a really special lineup for you, and we're going to be focused on, as part of this webinar, learning cultural competency tips from Operation Allies Welcome and guests from Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. So with that, before we get started, I want to introduce our Executive Director for the White House Office of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships, Melissa Rogers, to provide a welcome. And then from there, we'll go into panelists. Melissa?
Great. Thank you, Marcus. I hope you're doing well. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this conversation. As Marcus said, this is the third in our webinar series, and it's been a great experience so far. We appreciate your participation, and we appreciate the participation of, uh, of so many of you who are already invested in welcoming and helping to resettle our Afghan allies to the United States. We know that your work is absolutely essential. There's no world in which we will get this done without your help. And so thank you for what you are already done, what you are doing, and what you will do in the future to make sure that these newcomers are warmly welcomed to the United States. I want to thank Marcus Coleman and Ben Odell for their leadership and help with this series. They've been instrumental in organizing it. Thanks so much to them, and also to the terrific speakers that we have that you'll hear from a bit later today as well. Also, just as a housekeeping note, this is a discussion that's for community purposes, not for press purposes. And so it's off the record for press purposes. If you have any questions or would like to connect for press purposes, just reach out to us and we'll make sure that you get connected to the right folks. So just another word of background as we get started. I know that most of you already know this, but Operation Allies Welcome is a project that is aimed at welcoming and resettling Afghan allies who were evacuated from Afghanistan months ago. And these include, of course, people who were working at our embassy in Kabul and their families, people who served as translators and interpreters for the United States, people who were aid and humanitarian workers on working with the United States and as its contractors, people who were at risk if they had stayed in Afghanistan, including people who were at risk because of their faith or beliefs, people who are human rights defenders, and also women and girls, among others. So these are people who have contributed much to Afghanistan and to the world. And now we are just honored and pleased to be able to welcome them to the United States and to help to make sure that they get a good start here. So this webinar is geared toward making sure that all of us have as much information as possible about this project and as much opportunity to assist in ways large and small. So thanks to everybody for taking time for joining us today. We welcome your ideas about future webinars that we might hold that you think would be particularly useful to this effort, and also just generally your stories, your comments, your questions. This is a great conversational endeavor for us to support such an important and historic project. So again, thank you to everyone, and we just welcome the opportunity to talk with you today. And with that, I'll hand it back to my colleague, Marcus.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And again, we are super excited to have all of you join us today. If you'd like, you can drop your organization name or location in the chat so we can just get a sense of who is on the call today. I see a lot of familiar faces and thankfully see a lot of new names. So super excited to have you all join us for this conversation as part of the Technical Assistance Series, Welcome to the Neighborhood. As I mentioned, the whole purpose of this technical assistance session, or the key theme, is going to be focused on cultural competency. And so we have two special guests that are going to provide presentations in terms of best practices. I'm super excited to have an opportunity to connect with them both. I followed their work. One of them worked with them very closely directly, and then the other one have followed the work of the organization they represent. So I think you guys will find their presentations to be very insightful. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop the questions in the Q&A pod. I see the chat is disabled, so I will call that out. If you have questions, feel free to drop the questions in the Q&A chat. So we will just keep things going in the Q&A pod for now, and I will tee up our first presenter and give her a quick introduction. Ms. Hurunnessa Fariad is the Director for Outreach for Multi-Faith Neighborhoods Network. She is also the head of outreach at the Al Dulles Area Muslim Society, or the Adams Center, and also serves as the secretary for the board of directors at Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, Leadership Circle for One America Movement, and member of the Fairfax County Faith and Equity Committee, in addition to being a board member for Lutheran Social Services for the National Capital Area, a board member at the American Muslim Institution, and involved with many other faith-based organizations. In addition to all of that wonderful stuff, she is the founder and music director for America's first mosque youth choir, the Adams Beat Choir. She is the founder and co-host of the Sister Act podcast, along with co-host Dr. Sabrina Dent and Rabbi Susan Shankman. These conversations are centered around shame, stigma, women's rights, social justice issues, and how our faiths address these topics. She will present on the work of the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network today, and how they in the Adams Center respect faith traditions of individuals being served, as well as tips, both large and small, so for working with our new neighbors. And so, Hurunnessa, we'll kick it over to you to give a presentation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for that gracious intro, and want to thank Melissa Rogers, everybody at HSS. Ben, it's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much for having these types of programs available to the community. I think it's so important for us to be able to give information out, not just from the sense of what's going on, but practical issues that really affect people's lives and the Afghans who are coming into the United States. I myself came to the United States as a child refugee from Afghanistan when the Soviets had invaded. And so what's going on right now hits really close to home, seeing the next wave, third or fourth wave of Afghans coming into the United States. In the 40 plus years of war, it has really been something that we've gotten used to. I don't know if we're, we were prepared to deal with things as they were coming, but we're doing the best we can, and everyone involved here is doing the best we can. And I think that shows in the efforts that are being taken. I'm going to talk a little bit first about what we have done at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network and at the Adams Center. Both are faith-based organizations. At Multi-Faith, we work with Muslims, evangelical Christians, and people of the Jewish faith all around the United States, and fostering relationships and using that as a benchmark to ameliorate our relationships, but also to tackle issues that are dear and important to each community, and each community is individual. And we start from clergy down, and we are also proponents of promoting religious freedom in the United States and across the globe as well. And one of our first projects that we took was this a national service project with the Afghan, newly arrived Afghans in the United States. And we're a national organization. So what we did is we reached out to our triads of imams, rabbis, and pastors all across the United States, and had them participate, if they wanted to, in this service project of collecting toiletries. And these are in 12 different cities. We were in the DMV, Dallas, Houston, Austin, Miami, Nashville, Detroit, Philly, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. And each one of these cities had a church, a mosque, and a synagogue that participated in collecting these toiletry items and then handing them off either to a resettlement agency in their area or to another Muslim or Afghan-owned organization that would eventually give these donated items to the Afghans who are coming to the United States. And we've collected thousands of boxes, and each individual box was particular to either a child, a woman, for a woman, or for a male. There was shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, toothbrush. We had little toys for the kids and coloring book and crayons, so that they felt that, they could, not just get stuff that's the boring stuff that they need, but also something that would make it a little bit more fun for them. And what we saw was this influx of people in our communities that are part of our multi-faith neighbors network who wanted to help. And they kept asking us, what can we do? What can we do? We want to help. And this project was quick and easy, but it really showed how faith communities are able to work together. It showed how faith communities can actually interact with one another and build on this idea of community, but in the sense of knowing that they're coming with their own faith beliefs and they're who they are as an individual without feeling threatened by anybody else, but they're serving the common good of serving humanity. And I think that speaks volume when we're talking about faith-based organization doing this type of work, because we're not forcing anything else on anyone. We're saying, come as you are, but these people need help. How are we going to help them? And the amount of love and respect and admiration that I have for everyone who has participated in this is immeasurable. I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you how grateful I am for each and every synagogue and church and mosque that has participated in this project that we took on. It was all over the news in different cities. And just on the internet, we had over 6 million views of the outpour of information that was going out to the communities and showing Muslims, evangelical Christians, and people of the Jewish faith working together to help Afghans coming into this country and helping people they probably will never meet. And I think that speaks volumes to what the United States is trying to portray out to the community as well. And so, and here I had the outreach department and the interfaith department as well. And we started the Afghan Funds Project, where we started collecting funds to help the individuals coming in. And these funds went to funeral services. They went to help pregnant ladies who just had given birth come into a hotel for a while with their families outside of the base because they'd just given birth at the hospital. These funds helped a lot of people flying from Dulles Airport who were green card holders who didn't have the funds to go back into their homes. We helped them pay. We helped pay for their flights and accommodations for them as well. And we had a lot of people coming in and donating to this fund. And I think that speaks also to volume, because a lot of the people who donated are people from different faith groups who just wanted to find a way where they can help. Maybe they couldn't pack boxes and bring it, but they could definitely get on their phone and make a donation online. And that's what a lot of them did. We also had a coat drive, and we collected over 2,000 coats. And we did this first mainly for Lutheran Social Services here in the North Capital area, which I'm on the board of because of what has happened here with the Afghan evacuees coming in. And we gave them about 1,100 coats. These were for men, women, and children. And I have to say that 99% of the coats that were donated were from the Christian community in Maryland. And they drove over an hour to come to Sterling and drop off these coats. They sorted all of them out between gender, sizes, and they even stayed to help sort some other things that weren't sorted. And they stayed and they bought boxes. They went to Home Depot and bought boxes and tape and helped us put these things together in a storage area of a local Afghan auto shop owner who was holding these coats for a while. So 1,100 of these coats went to LSS, who has been giving the coats out to the Afghans who are going through LSS. And I think they've run out of the 1,100. So they just today asked me for more, which we're going to give them. And whatever's remaining is going to go to one of the bases here in Virginia, whichever one needs it, or it might end up going to Jersey as well. But again, that couldn't have happened if it wasn't the faith-based communities coming together and saying, oh, there is this need, we can help, we can collect coats, we can bring it down to you. Here it is, it doesn't matter how far you are, but we wanna help. So this was another way that the faith-based community was able to help us get these coats to the families, to the kids, to the women who need it, because now you know that the weather is really cold, even though it's the fall right here. We had an interpreters list that we shared with Virginia State's, with the governor's office. And so that if they needed to do background checks for anyone who was willing to translate, they could have done that as well. I know they have their own list, but we wanted to provide a backup just in case. These are American Afghans who are either born here or raised here, who speak fluently in either one or two of the Afghan language, which is Pashto or Farsi Dari. And so that they can tap into that list and really reach out to people. We had a family that ended up being thrown on my lap at a police station here in Northern Virginia. Two of these girls, they're both sisters, married to two brothers. They were DV victims. One came a year and a half ago. She was 8 months pregnant. The other one came in August on one of these planes. But because they were in an abusive household, they ran out and went to the police station. They did not speak English. And so the police station called Adams, and then I'm the only Afghan here at Adams that speak their language. So I went and I picked them up, and they've been with me for the past 2.5 months. LSS has done a great job in giving them temporary housing through what Airbnb has provided as free housing, temporary housing for these families. And they had an aunt and a brother at a base in New Mexico. We were able to pay through Adams to bring them to Northern Virginia so they can get reunited with their family. That was really heartwarming for me to be part of something where I can help bring families together. The pregnant girl ended up having birth. I ended up in the delivery room with her. And because I needed to translate and give support to her, I never thought I would ever be in a delivery room with anyone. So that was an experience. I'm so grateful for that. And they even let me cut the umbilical cord. It was such a beautiful thing to witness. And so now they've become part of my family. I feel like I have another family that I'm taking care of, doing their paperwork, filling out forms for them. I'm actually going into LSS tomorrow to figure out where their case is at, because their caseworker was pregnant also, and she's on maternity leave. So although I am not an employee of LSS, I am on the board, but I feel that I can go and help if I have a few hours during the day and help out, make it a little bit easier for this family or another family, because I do have access into their office because of being on the board. It was just another awe-inspiring moment is when I was able to collect $24,000 for their rent, and it's $24,000 strictly came from the multi-faith community, right? People from the Jewish community, people from the Christian community, all wanted to help. I even had one of my friends from who is with me in Virginia Interfaith. She sent her something of her 401k or something at the end of the year. It's about $5,000 that she sent. She's like, my husband and I want to donate this to that family. And so again, she didn't have to do that, right? But these are the little things that when you add them up, bring people together, and it shows how humanity can work together in times of need. And we can really build a community that is resilient and so in tune with one another because we feel each other as human beings. And I thought that that was really beautiful. We've been working with other Afghan communities and Muslim communities here around the Nova area as well. There's been a lot of different coalitions that have been brought together, who have organized themselves and really want to help. So that's a great thing that a lot of people are mobilized and helping this movement. I personally had to rent a 26-foot truck that I drove myself, donations from a storage site in Sterling to Springfield here in Virginia. And the storage site was huge. It was 10 by 20 and it was packed with donations that we had collected. And so I drove that over to Springfield to the Imam Ali Center, and we dropped off all the things. So I'm 5'1". If I can drive a 26 and so, working at LSS has definitely opened up channels for us to be able to come into that area and help people in the resettlement. And that's mainly what I focused on since the beginning of this whole thing that started on August 15th. I'm going to go into some practical things you can do when you're dealing with Afghan families, because the culture and the nuances that they deal with are very different than what we go through here in the United States. I'm lucky that I grew up with both, and I was raised in New York City. And so coming home, my father definitely was very Afghan, and then I would go outside and go to school and know what it's like to be outside in the community. So when you're interacting with Afghans, avoid trying to shake the hands of the opposite gender, because that is something most Afghans do not do. So it's better just to be safe and not do that. Instead, what you can just do is take your right hand and just put it on your chest and say hello, hi, how are you? Or salam, which means peace. It's an Arabic word, but we use that as Afghans as well. And that's your best bet to go with. Usually the men talk with men and the women talk with women. I think that's something they're just going to have to get used to is different here. But now because they're new, they find it odd when men interact with their wife or vice versa. They usually keep the gender separate. And with time, they'll see that over here it's a little bit different and it's okay. When you go into their homes, always take a gift with you, either a cake or a flower or a box of chocolates. Afghans don't go to anyone's house empty-handed. And so that would be a nice little gesture for you to go if you're visiting them. When you enter the house, you can take off your shoes right by the door. We do not walk around in the house with our shoes. We pray a lot, so we want the area to be clean and not bringing any dirt from the shoes inside the house. They will offer you fruits, dried fruits, nuts, stuff on the table. You will probably walk into the living room and see the coffee table set up with a lot of goodies. And that is a way of welcoming. Afghans are known to be hospitable, and it doesn't matter what they have in their house, they will offer it to you. So you will see dried nuts of all sorts, mulberries, cashews, pistachios, almonds. And I know everybody knows what those are, but I did send pictures to Ben, who will email them out to you or put it on the chat. I'm trying to give you just like a reference of what these things are that people put on their table. And also when you invite them over, you can use this reference also. I'm sure not everyone knows what mulberries look like, but they're delicious. And so going into the house, if they offer you these items on the table and they pick it up and come to you like in front of your face and say, take it, you have to take something, even if it's a piece of raisin, because if you don't, they feel insulted and they feel that you don't like their stuff and that they haven't been able to be a good host for you. So just take something. They will most probably offer you tea, not so much coffee drinkers. So they will offer you the green tea, black tea, or some kind of fancy tea, but they're really good too. And so Afghans don't ask you if you want something in their house. They will always offer it to you. So when they offer it to you, make sure you just take whatever they're giving you, pick something that you like, and just eat that and drink the coffee as well, the tea as well. Yeah, so a lot of the things is just formalities of how they end up giving you stuff. In your house, if you're inviting them over, make believe you're the Afghan host and you're doing the same thing they're doing as I just explained. Make believe you're Afghan and you're putting this table out with some fruits, the dried fruits and nuts, maybe a cake or cookies, that's fine as well. And if you want to cook food, Afghans are very particular about their meat. You make sure you get halal meat, which on that link, there is a sign of what the halal logo looks like and the halal stores that you go to in different areas. If you Google halal meat store in your city, you will most probably find one within the vicinity, and it's best to get the meat from there. We don't eat pork, we don't drink alcohol, mostly. Some do, but a majority of these people coming in will not be drinking alcohol or eating pork, so don't mix any of that stuff. Stay away from gelatin, anything containing gelatin, unless it's specified that it's either vegan or fish-based. Then that's okay. I even put up a picture of halal marshmallows, which you can find at any of the halal stores. Those make great s'mores, and they have no gelatin in them, so you don't have to worry about giving them something that they might later find offensive. Like I said, the halal meat stores are your best friends in finding stuff that they can eat. You don't have to question anything in those stores. If you want to have a prayer rug in your house, that would be a good idea because we do pray 5 times a day, and it is important for us to have a prayer rug. So if you can purchase one on Amazon, you can go to any of the stores in your area or any of the stores around you or online, just purchase one just to have it on hand in case they do come over your house so that they can have their prayer rug when they pray. If you're going to take them shopping, please do take them to the halal meat store because they do need that stuff in their home as well. There's a lot of different spices and different things that they like to put in their food, and you can't find that at a regular grocery store. And plus, they can find their meat in that store as well. For the women are very shy to talk about their needs for feminine products. So if you're taking them shopping, please just go ahead and get some sanitary napkins for them. so that they don't feel embarrassed about asking for it, but you know that they need it. So you can just put that in the cart for them or have it delivered for them as well. And so I think that's a brief interview of what I'm going to tell you guys. There's a lot more, but I don't want to inundate you. I hope that is helpful. And I know Ben put the link in the chat, but if you have any questions for me, you can always reach out to us as well. Thank you so much.
Hurunnessa, thank you very much for that wonderful explanation and for providing some recommendations. We know so many people have asked in the past from prior webinars, what are some things that we can do to be a welcoming household? What are some recommendations or some ideas that we should consider? And so, Hurunnessa, I appreciate you providing some of those recommendations. We know that people are in different positions, and so these aren't mandatory, but we appreciate you providing some very just practical steps and providing some context when we talk about being a welcoming household or entering a welcoming household. What are some of the things that occur? So I have a few questions that had showed up in the Q&A. One of them is actually going to be very basic, but I know you had mentioned a few times the acronym LSS. I know what that means, but if you could share for the audience who LSS is, how they're structured, and then we have some other questions that we'll ask before we go to our next presenter.
Absolutely. So LSS NCA stands for Lutheran Social Services Northern National Capital Area. They're the largest resettlement agency here in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And that's the organization that I'm on the board of. And they're the resettlement agency that is getting a huge number of evacuees in their roster, and they're scrambling to get the needs met. So I apologize for not
no,
LSS means.
It's all right. I work in the federal government and we use acronyms all the time. No, thank you for sharing that. And then the second question, are there any differences that we should be aware of in terms of, I know when we talk about interfaith, people typically think of just, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, but what about within the faith? So Shia Muslims or Sunni Muslims, are there any considerations that folks should be aware of as they're welcoming community or welcoming people into the community?
I think what we said is pretty general that apply for both because Afghans, the culture is not so much indicative of the faith. They're two separate things. It's just the hospitality of it is like that. And then the nuances of just don't touch someone from the opposite sex, gender is the best bet for you to just not offend anyone. And I think that goes for both. The prayers are the same. They pray on the prayer rugs as well. I don't ever say there's a huge difference between Shia and Muslims and Sunnis. They're very tied close together. A lot of people think there's a lot of nuances, but we're one community. We value each other to the point where the truck that I took with the donations actually went to a Shia mosque. And I myself am Sunni, but I look at people for who they are and what they want to do. So we can work together, even if there is that small, minute difference, right? But the point is that we have to look on understanding that we have so many commonalities, but then also respecting our differences.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work that you do. And thank you. And if people want to stay in touch, are there other resources on the Multi-Faith Network website, or is there any recommended places that people can go if they have additional questions from a cultural competency perspective?
What they can do is they can email me. I'm more than happy to give my email in the Q&A. I'll write that in there. They can email me as well. But if you want to help, and if you're in the DMV area, or if you want to donate from somewhere else monetarily, Lutheran Social Services website is lssnca.org. They always have different things that they need in different times of the week even. They sometimes change it weekly. So if you want to help and you have different resources, there's always different things you can do to help out the Afghans, even from just being in the living room of your home. And that goes a long way. So never think that anything you're doing is too small. You can just do it in the click of your phone as well. But I will put my email address in the chat and in the Q&A, and you guys can email me anytime.
Thank you very much, Hurunnessa. One other thing that I want to pick up on that she mentioned, and I know a few of you have asked about this as well. I have some friends that are on this webinar. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. When she talked about donating clothes or donating something, the first thing she actually did was ask, what they needed instead of just showing up with stuff. And so we want to make sure that as you're thinking about donating or volunteering, doing so responsibly by asking what a facility needs, and where possible, if the option's available, providing direct cash to the organization of your choice that's going to be providing additional services, so we can make sure folks are getting what they need. I'm based here in the National Capital area as well. It is a bit chilly, so I know they appreciated the coats. But maybe in Southern California, not so much. I'm not sure though, because I don't know the weather there. So thank you very much, Hurunnessa, for that. And then again, just another plug to donate and volunteer responsibly. And now we are going to shift to our next presenter. So our next presenter is Harris Tarin. And so Harris is the Senior Advisor at Operation Allies Welcome here at the Department of Homeland Security. He is a regular on news television programs, including CNN, BBC, Fox News, and MSNBC. He also writes regularly in national and international publications like the Washington Post, LA Times, Christian Science Monitor, and Al Jazeera. He was among 3 leading young Americans recognized by President Obama for his work in international security and civil rights, and is an Ariane D. Rothschild Cambridge Fellow and a University of Southern California, Georgetown AMLCI. I forgot what that acronym means, but I do know the organization, the Effort Really Well Fellow. He is an author of Intro to Muslim in America and co-author of Rethinking the Red Line, Free Speech, Religious Freedom, and Social Change. Harris, we will invite you to come to the stage and provide some additional remarks and presentations. Unfortunately, Harris's camera is not working at the moment, but wants to provide you all a picture as he provides some insights from Operation Allies Welcome. Thank you, Harris. Oh, okay, Harris, are you there?
Able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. My apologies again for my camera not working. It is part of the challenges of technology at times. But I appreciate you, Ben, and the team, and Melissa for putting this conversation together.
So Harris, we have a little bit of audio
Extremely
issues.
important for us to think through
Harris?
the operation as someone who has been involved in this operation since.
So we have some technical difficulties or some audio issues from Harris. So what we're gonna try to do is to get.
Are you able to hear me now, Mark?
You're fading in and out a little bit. Can you come back on just a second?
Yes. How's this?
Okay, that's a little bit better.
Thank you so much. Again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. As I was saying, I wanted to thank you, Ben, and the rest of the team, including Melissa, for putting this conversation together. I think it's of utmost importance for us to really think through this current mission, Operation Allies Welcome, what it's about, because it really is a once-in-a-lifetime type of mission for us as an American public, as a whole of society, not just government, not just the Afghan American community, not just the Muslim American community, but this really is an operation that has been that is bringing together or bringing our allies, folks who served with our troops, who were standing next to our diplomatic corps, folks who worked on human rights, the rights of minorities, religious freedom. In the past 20 years, they stood shoulder to shoulder with us in our engagement to try to, in our experiment, and also to try to address and bring democracy to Afghanistan. Unfortunately, they have had to leave, are finding a home here in the United States, like many of us did. As Hurunnessa mentioned, many of us Afghan Americans are refugees. We've been through that experience. I myself was a refugee as a child. what made
Harris,
our
Harris.
journey and our experience easier, civil society. When we came
So
to the
Harris,
US,
so we still have some audio issues. Ben is gonna reach out to you to see if we can get you plugged in an alternative way. While we do that, I want to transition back to some questions to Hurunnessa. And so Harris, if we can, we're gonna pull down this slide. We'll do some additional Q&A while we get Harris plugged in via phone for folks joining us. Again, apologies to everyone for the audio and technology issues. I was hearing some of his comments. I think that it's important to hear what he has to say, and we want to make sure that that is clear when he comes through. And so Ben will be working with Harris. And while we do that, I want to pull back up for Hurunnessa. And so, Hurunnessa, this is I know, I appreciate you mentioning some of the cultural sensitivities around just engaging families and people, especially from a gender perspective. We have one question from an attendee in terms of for doctors or how people should approach doctor visits from the opposite gender, or just some considerations as people are setting up that first appointment or those first series of appointments. Are there some resources that help that have a directory of culturally competent providers or doctors from across in your particular area or community? Any recommendations you have for folks?
So I think the best thing with that would be that if someone, a lot of them who are coming and seeking medical help and need someone, majority of the time they will ask for especially the women will ask for a female doctor. And if people can provide that, that would be a great asset. You know, people live in different areas, so I can't give a general overview of which providers give what, but I think the sense here right now would be that even if they're in need of medical help and there's only a male available, if talking to them and explaining this to them, having someone who speaks their language, who can translate that for them, will ease a lot of anxiety. And I think that is important here. So if you are providing that services, or if you know someone's coming in that will need that service, if you know an Afghan who speaks their language, who is a friend of yours, it's good to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what's happening. I need someone to translate for me. I think that will alleviate a lot of the tension and the anxiety. We do have the Afghan project with Lutheran Social Services, which is made up of mostly all Afghan Americans who are volunteers willing to help. So if you guys are in need of that, you can reach out to me, and then I can get you in contact with any one of those who can help you translate to the community coming in.
Oh, that's awesome. And is the Afghan project, is that for Lutheran Social Services for the National Capital Area? Or
Yes.
do other okay, awesome.
Yeah, because we have about 55 people underneath that, and we have 3 different groups. One is the donations team, one is the house searching team, and one is the donation liaison team. But they're 95% all Afghan Americans who speak at least 2 languages, English and Farsi, or English and Pashto, or English, Farsi and Pashto. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to get the Afghan American community here in the DMV area mobilized and ready, because these services we know would rely a lot on being interpreters and volunteers for the resettlement agency.
Excellent. No, appreciate that. So another question that's come up a few times in the Q&A pod is actually about food. And so the question, the theme essentially is some communities have a hard time accessing halal products. Some people grew up eating kosher. I know that there is a distinction, but what are some recommendations that you would have in case some halal products aren't readily available in their community? And would kosher be a potential alternative, or any other recommendations you have for folks?
Yeah, so I'll give you 2 options. One is to go vegan or vegetarian. Sorry, you can go vegetarian and just make stuff that's vegetable. It's fine. All those things are okay to eat, and you can get fish. You don't have to have halal. All the fish is halal, so you can have a fish and vegetables in there. As Muslims, we consider the kosher meat as halal, so they can eat the kosher meat as well.
Excellent. And then last question for now, kind of a big question, but I know you are on multiple boards. And I think that board leadership and board engagement, and as you mentioned in some of your stories, that's a very important role. What recommendations? I know we probably have some people that are on the call that are also sitting on boards of nonprofit organizations across the country. If they don't have someone representing the Afghan community, or they're looking to make some outreach, what are some recommendations you would have for boards to do, either in terms of recruitment or just engagement, as they think about particularly supporting those nonprofits, right? Because as a board voice, you serve as an important governance partner to maybe a nonprofit organization. But what recommendations would you have for some of the board members that are on the call?
Absolutely, that's a really great question. I think diversity is really important for any organization, and knowing that there's a need in a specific community of a certain type of people, you need to make sure you have people from that background on your board. So I'm the first Muslim woman on LSS NCA's board. I'm the first Afghan woman, Afghan on that board. So they realized that they're lacking that. And they quickly went ahead and asked me if I'd join. And I said yes, because I knew that they needed that voice. So I think nonprofit organizations really have to look at their community and who they're providing services for, and making sure that those community members have representation on the board. Otherwise, you're missing a whole range of people. And I'm not talking just about Afghans, I'm talking about in general. There are many organizations who serve people in the Black community, but there's no one who is from the Black community on the board. And so you're missing a whole slew of resources that need to be given to the Black community, but because they're not part of the board, you're not getting their input on that. So really have to be conscious of who you're serving and making sure that that representation is on your board, and also making sure that there's women on the board as well. I'm a big proponent of making sure when I go, even if I'm speaking somewhere, I would like to have equal amount of men and women speaking. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and I do point that out. Even at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, one of my biggest requirements as in my job is to make sure that women are coming on to this work, especially Muslim women, because in clergy, we don't have female representation. So we need to make sure that we have Muslim faith leaders in different cities being represented at our events as well. So you have to kind of look at where you are and what you're serving.
Well, thank you for that. That is a very helpful word, and I think something that we want to definitely consider as part of some of the longer term conversations as they're moving forward. So it looks like we have Harris back as well. So Harris, I want to call you back up to provide some of your insights and have Q&A with you as well. And so let's do a quick audio check. Harris, can you hear us okay?
Harris, this is Ben Odell. If you can hit *6, that should unmute your line. Hit *6.
Are you able to hear me, Marcus?
Perfect. Thank you very much, and appreciate everybody for joining us. I know we've been on a few Zoom calls, so thank you for sticking this out with us. Harris, I want to give the floor to you, man, and provide some remarks, and then we'll have time for maybe one or two questions. So Harris, I'll pass it over to you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Again, my apologies for the technology issues. Quickly, what I will start with, Marcus, what I was saying before was that many of these folks who have arrived here are our allies, people who have worked with us, worked with our military, our diplomatic corps. Many of them are not strangers to who we are as a society, as a community. And so, many of the things that Hurunnessa mentioned are great. But I want to make sure that we know that these folks have been our allies, have been our friends, have stood side by side. And that is why we see such an outpouring from our veterans community. Our veterans community is so involved, so engaged, and so invested in ensuring that our allies are resettled with dignity, with honor, and the respect that they deserve. Because not only have they stood with us for the past 20 years on the front lines of keeping our country safe, our nation safe, but also in ensuring that we as Americans are able to get our message and communication to our allies in Afghanistan. So I just wanted to preface all of the conversations that we're having around that these are people who are our allies, they are refugees, yes, but there are people who know us and engage us on a regular basis. And so we owe that friendship to them. So just wanted to start off by saying that in terms of the operation that we're doing, I've been involved in it since day one. August 15th, I was in Doha, Qatar, came back to the US. We had initially had over 65,000 people on military bases, what we call safe havens. And now we've reduced that to just under 40,000 people. So as you're thinking about your congregations, as you're thinking about your communities, as you're thinking about schools and Rotary clubs, the first thing to know is that most of you no matter where you live, will get some Afghans. Afghans will be coming to you as neighbors. They'll be coming to your children's schools. They will be coming to your local interfaith center, community center. There might be a mosque that you engage in at an interfaith level. That mosque will probably have an Afghan family who would be newly arrived. And so your engagement with the mosque might include a conversation around having Afghan families integrated into that community, into the broader community. And to be very honest with you, Hurunnessa went over some of the nuances, cultural nuances. What I would say is that our Afghan allies who are integrating into communities need what every other American needs. They need support because they are starting a life in a new community. And imagine one of us, right, as we enter into a city. Some of us, we have difficulties going to the DMV. Some of us have difficulties registering our kids in school. Some of us have difficulties in finding basic social services, right? And so what many of our friends will need is support in those areas. They're not going to need some special help. They're not so foreign in so many ways that they will not be able to fend for themselves, to work hard. As you know, Marcus and our friends on this call, immigrant communities make America a richer place. Every place where you have an immigrant community, you see communities working hard. You see job opportunities. You see entrepreneurship. You see small businesses. This community will definitely be on their feet quickly, just like many of us. When we first arrived, my godfather, who was an 80-year-old Jewish man, they initially helped us with resettling, but then my family started to establish small businesses. We started to ensure that we were contributing to society, to community. And so you're going to get a very hardworking Afghan community who want to be engaged, who want to start businesses, who want to start a new life, who want to ensure that they're feeling welcome, but will work very hard in ensuring their integration into society. So a lot of service, a lot of basic things like, can I help you go to the DMV and understand how the DMV works? Can I walk you through that bureaucracy? Can I walk you through the bureaucracy of your local social service office? Can I help you understand how the healthcare system works? These are basic questions that we as Americans, of course, who live here sometimes struggle with, but you can imagine newly arrived folks that their questions will be a lot more acute. So my message overall, and I'll leave some time for questions because I think the questions will be important. My message overall is when you see our Afghan allies come to your city, you don't need to treat them like they're some alien group of folks. They actually are people who have worked hard over the past 20 years to be our allies, to be our friends, to be those individuals who've supported our national security. But I think that basic lending of a hand, ensuring that they know how to get social services, they know where to go for a driver's license, just reaching out to them saying, you're supported, we're here to support you. They're going to get on their feet, they're going to support their families, they're going to be the next crop of American immigrants, like we've had for the past 3 centuries, who will integrate, who will establish businesses, who will become successful Afghan Americans, and whose children will be lawyers, doctors, and engineers, and so many other things. And I think that's the way we need to make sure that we look at this issue, because if we do treat them like they are a foreign specimen, unfortunately, that would create challenges and issues that would bring further issues for us. So for us, I think the first thing is to remember is that they need everything that other Americans need, with just a little bit more support because of some of the language and cultural barriers, but they're here to work hard. And I'm on the bases every single day, and they keep telling me, our Afghan allies keep telling me, we just want to go home so we can start working, so we can support our families. We don't want a handout, we just want to start working. And I think that is the message that they want to send their fellow Americans. And I think we as a society are ready to accept them with open arms. And so that would be my message to our friends in the faith communities across the country.
Thank you very much for that, Harrison, providing that all-important context. A question that had showed up as kind of a theme. How because I know that you said, like you said, you spend a lot of work on a lot of time on bases. How are our bases providing culturally competent support while people wait to move to communities across the country, and for communities that are going to be receiving people from bases? What you mentioned one recommendation, which is true for bureaucracy, right? How can I help you navigate the Department of Motor Vehicles? But what are some other recommendations that you'd have that communities can take as folks are coming from the bases into communities across the country?
Sure, sure, Marcus. One of the basic, very simple things that we can do is reach out. So they're most likely our allies who come to a local community. They're going to most likely be connected to either a mosque, a community center, or a resettlement agency. And what we can do is reach out to one of the resettlement agencies at the local level, and it's just a basic Google search, local resettlement agency. And if it's a congregation, if it's a faith leader, a community leader, you just reach out to the local community and say, we'd like to support our recently arrived Afghan refugees. And so, like you said, DMV, understanding and navigating the healthcare system. And I think this is a big one that we see on the bases, and that we're trying to transition and provide a smoother transition for them, because many of them do not have access to immediate healthcare, whether that's private or even public. And so helping them set up workshops to understand the healthcare system, because they have children. Many of them have 2, 3, 4 children that they need to make sure that the checkups, they've gone through an immense amount of trauma over the past 3 months at the Kabul airport, at what we call the lily pads, the military bases overseas. And even though we're providing basic medical support on our bases here, they will need more extensive checkups. They will need to understand how to get insurance. They'll need to understand if they qualify for some of the public and social services at the local level with health insurance. So that's another big issue that we're looking at and that we're trying to address. The third is, if you are able to connect them with jobs, one thing I constantly hear, Marcus, on the basis from our Afghan allies is, I want to get in and I want to start working. And so if we know a network of folks who want to give jobs, small businesses, community centers, who are looking especially to hire highly qualified Afghan women and men. Some of these individuals who are on our bases, a good portion of them, they were working professionals. These people were doctors, engineers, they ran NGOs, they worked in government agencies, and their lives were turned upside down overnight. But they have an immense amount of skill sets that we can use as a society. And so connecting them to local jobs, ensuring local job fairs is another big thing that I think faith communities and the network of faith communities do really well. They can connect folks. So I think those are 2 other things, healthcare and jobs, that are constantly asked about on our bases.
Thank you very much for that, Harris. And I know we are coming right up on time, but I think that that's a great a topic to end on. So as we mentioned, so we are going to continue to do these technical assistance calls on a bi-weekly basis. We want to invite you all back for our call that will be taking place on December 15th, where we'll be covering some of the topics that were mentioned. We also want to let you all know that these calls will continue after the first of the year as well. And so we know that there are a number of topics and some ideas that you're engaged in. So if you have models of engagement, if you have other practical examples, or if you have resources to please share them with us as well. Want to also invite you all to continue to listen in, not just to this webinar, but as we mentioned, there are webinars that we've done. This is the 3rd edition, so we'll provide the recordings for those as well. So just be on the lookout for that email that'll provide the previous recordings. And again, I think one of the big things that I hear from both Hurunessa's presentation and from Harris is to get connected to some of the local community organizations, especially those local resettlement agencies and those local non-government organizations that are involved in working with families and communities, and find ways, again, to volunteer and donate responsibly. With that, I want to thank everybody for attending the call today. Want to pass it to Ben to see if there's any other final agenda items that he would like to cover before we close out. And we will see you all again on December 13th. So Ben, anything else? Or December
Thank you.
15th.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our call today. We have really appreciated everybody's participation. I also want to thank our presenters, both Harris and Hurunnessa, to her presentation and their information. Just so much helpful information that we've received today. And thanks, everybody, for your patience, the technical challenges. Thanks, Marcus.
Absolutely. And again, we want to thank you all for attending. We have some great resources and questions in the chat. See some organizations that have provided some good information and program information as well. So we'll be in touch with you all if there's particular things that you are doing or ways that you want to get connected with Operation Allies Welcome or any of the presenters that you heard today. Again, please feel free to drop that in the Q&A pod and we will capture that information and pass it along. I see Hurunnessa dropped her email in the chat. Let me actually get this. Harris, is there a particular email that folks can get, or he might have dropped already. If there's a particular email that folks can reach you, Harris.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Oh, okay, awesome. So we can send
Yeah.
what's a way for people to stay in contact with you and with Operations Allies Welcome from the federal government perspective?
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm not able to type into the chat, but my email address is Haris, HARIS .TARIN, Tarin, hq.dhs.gov. And you can reach out to me with any questions. We'll make sure that we respond as soon as possible with the Operation Allies Welcome here.
Awesome. Excellent.
And Marcus,
so, yes,
one
go
more
ahead.
point. Just one more point, and I just want to encourage us as we're approaching things from a cultural competent perspective. Everything you've heard today are ideas, perspectives, different ways of approaching it, but always you can approach any individual that you're trying to approach culturally in a culturally competent way with curiosity and questions for their own unique experience and background. We hope that these points are helpful and suggestions, but every community, every individual is different. Every family that we're going to support is different. So we hope this provides you with some ideas and perspectives, but always approach our families with a posture of curiosity and appreciation for their culture. And many times you will be well served in connecting and supporting that family. So we hope you appreciate the suggestions and ideas you've had today, but we encourage you to think through and consider how that might look in every community that you might work with. So thanks so much for participating today and hearing some of these suggestions and for the gracious, culturally competent, appreciative way that you will engage and connect with families being supported through this work.
Excellent. Well said. Thank you all very much, everybody. Take care.